And will COVID-19 and lockdowns wind down in 2022? We ask an expert on what the new year could hold after 2 exceptionally trying years. Good to be with you on this New Year's Eve. I'm Tami Ngubeni. This is your Daytime Update. Now, the past 2 years have been the most difficult in recent years. Many lives were lost because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen entire economies as well as industries brought to their knees because of the lockdown restrictions. But despite this, others have thrived and new ways of doing things quickly became the norm. Omicron's lower death rate, albeit increasingly transmissible, has been touted as the possible end of the COVID-19 pandemic as we know it. What then will our 2022 look like? Futurist Graeme Codrington of Tomorrow Today Global joins us now. A very good afternoon to you. Great to be talking to you on this New Year's Eve. Perhaps let's start with one of the big trends that have emerged due to COVID-19 over the past 2 years. As far as the world of work, at least, is concerned, the phenomenon of working from home. Looking into 2022, Graeme, are we likely to see this continue, or are we likely to look at more of a hybrid working environment where people are working both from home and from their traditional workspaces, so to speak?
I think one of the very interesting things about the COVID disruption in the workplace in particular is that it has merely accelerated some of the trends that were already in place. I've been researching the future of work for about 15 years. And I think that the hybrid workplace, working from home, being more flexible, being more remote, has been a trend that's been around for a decade or more. And I think that what COVID has done is it's proven to some employers, to some people, that in fact we can do this. We can work from home. We can be more flexible. I don't think too many people want to do it full time and permanently like we've done for the last 2 years. But I do think that we're going to see quite a lot of things that we've done during the COVID lockdown period continuing for the rest of the decade, especially when it brings productivity and helps us to get that elusive work-life balance that many of us are looking for. So yes, in 2022, whatever happens with COVID, I think we're going to see more of a hybrid working environment where you go into the office when you really need to, you're able to work at home when that maybe is a better option for you.
Now, still staying with the world of work, we have seen some industries suffer, but we've seen other industries really boom throughout COVID-19. I'm thinking, digital industries, IT, software development, etc. Is this likely to be the future for our children? Are we likely to see greater escalations in progress and development along those fronts?
Again, there's been some very interesting situations, haven't there been? To add to your list, one that I heard of a while ago that was a bit unexpected for me is, of course, all the vets, the veterinary surgeons have all had a really great year. A lot of us have bought lockdown pets and have maybe looked after our animals a little bit more than before. So it's not just the industries that maybe are the obvious ones, the digital and telecoms and so on, but there are a lot of industries that have actually had very good years. And I think that again indicates that we are at a time of shift and change in our economy, in human history. Our president spoke in his State of the Nation address at the beginning of last year, before we knew that COVID was going to hit us. He talked about the fourth industrial revolution, and he talked about moving towards a digital future. And one of the things we've done in the last 2 years is we've really accelerated online ordering and our e-commerce in South Africa. I love the fact now that we've got this fleet of small vehicles and motorcyclists who are able to deliver packages, in many cases, next day delivery in the big centers in South Africa. And so we're seeing not just at the high end of digital and fourth industrial revolution, but throughout the value chain in our economy, opportunities emerging and COVID accelerating some of the development that we knew was coming. And so for young people in particular, as they look ahead, maybe they're feeling uncertain, maybe they're feeling a little bit worried about the future. And I understand that. But on the other hand, I think it's a very exciting time to be a young person, to be new into the economy, because I think there are a lot more opportunities, a lot more jobs than maybe there used to be a few years ago and a few decades ago. And if the economy picks up, if COVID is starting to wear itself out, and the world economy gets a boost and a bump, hopefully South Africa gets that as well, and we can see some better and good economic news next year.
And what would you say are the perhaps more traditional industries that had suffered throughout COVID that are going to start being resuscitated in the new year?
Well, look, of course, the one that we all are thinking about, and if we have friends and family in the tourism, the hospitality and entertainment industries, those we obviously hope are going to be amongst the first to benefit from hopefully better conditions. We hope that Omicron is indicating possibly an ending of COVID. Obviously, vaccinations and immunity that people have got from recovering from COVID are helping us to possibly see the end of COVID. If that happens, hopefully there isn't another bad variant on the way. Hopefully there's only good variants or weaker variants coming out. If that happens, I think there'll be people all around the world who are desperate to travel, and we could see some remarkable incoming international tourism next year. South Africa is set up to be a destination of choice, and obviously with our recent discovery of Omicron, and we've been in the news all around the world with our scientists really helping to raise our profile as a country that knows what it's doing when it comes to COVID, and seems to be handling it well. I think we could see an influx of tourism, and hopefully local hospitality and entertainment gets a real boost next year. So that would certainly be my New Year's wish for that part of our economy. And then, of course, we know that companies like Amazon and Google are planning to put real investment into the country over the next few years. That should come on stream fairly quickly in 2022. And so, everything from a very hands-on and quite traditional industry like tourism to high-end technology, I'm cautiously optimistic, Tommy, I suppose is the right phrase, about what we could see next year and in the next few years.
And that perhaps is the only disposition that one can hold at this point, one of cautious optimism, because as you rightly said, it all depends on whether Omicron is the beginning of the end for COVID-19, everything very much hinging on that, and whether or not there will be a new variant that emerges after this one, which proves itself more potent. But let's move on now to issues of education. We've seen the entire education paradigm have to cater for learners not going into schools. And we know the importance of physical one-on-one contact when it comes to education. That has not been possible in many instances. What can we look forward to in the new year as far as education is concerned, and how learners will be educated, as well as perhaps all the innovations that institutions have put in place in order to accommodate learners during the times of COVID?
Well, obviously, Tommy, all of us are really hopeful that schools in particular and universities as well can get back to face-to-face learning as quickly as possible. We know that it is possible to study remotely, and maybe as you were hinting in your question, there'll be some innovations that are brought into the education space. Some of the online learning, some of the videos that students have been watching are actually very good, and hopefully will still be incorporated into education in the future. But we know that education is more than just transferring data and information. It's about the experience, it's about engaging with other people and having that meeting of minds with your fellow students and with your teachers in the community. And we really do want that and need that. And so that's our wish. And we hope that that's possible. We hope that the lessons we've learned over the last 2 years can be applied no matter what the COVID situation is. The only concern that I have is for sort of January and February. The Omicron wave seems to be subsiding in South Africa, but if everybody overreacts to the loosening of the regulations for this evening's celebrations and maybe over the next week or so of holiday, and we have another spike in Omicron infections, we could face early disruption. Not necessarily with regulations, not necessarily with the governments delaying the start of the school year again, but just maybe teachers and staff at those schools maybe succumbing to COVID. We're seeing this internationally at the moment. A lot of flights were cancelled in America and Europe over Christmas, not because the regulator shut them down, but just because pilots and air crew were sick. And couldn't actually fulfill their duties. And we wouldn't want that for teachers and staff. So as much as I think the goal is to get everybody back to school, there's still a possibility of disruption. And hopefully there's a little word of caution in my tone and my voice that we should all just take it easy over the next few weeks so that we can ensure that our young people can get back into the classrooms and get the education they really want.
I wonder what our tomorrow looks like when it comes to how we engage with each other as human beings, the social constructs that we have. Are we likely to see a situation emerge around the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, some sort of a classless dynamic emerging from that? Your views?
Tommy, actually, this is one of the things I'm most worried about. Although I speak mainly about business and my background is in finance and technology, I did a master's in sociology, and I'm really passionate about understanding the impact of our environment and our context on people and on how people live and work and how they engage with each other. And I'm really worried that the last 2 years have created deep divides in families, in communities. As you say, one of those divides is between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And there are other divides that have emerged over the last few years. People who support one political view and then people who support another, and maybe people who are more conservative and people who are more liberal. And I'm worried that during COVID, we haven't really come together as a society. We've seen more divides between people. And I'm really worried for how that plays out over the next few years. I'm worried about how it plays out in families, where maybe people have said things or done things over the last few months that are really difficult to come back from. That might happen in businesses, and it certainly is happening in society. And I think we're going to have a reckoning about this. We're going to have to think about how we engage with each other and how we engage with the world around us. Because if COVID has taught us anything, it's taught us that we're only all going to get through it if we all get through it. Nobody's safe until everybody's safe. And we are really a global community. And we need to act and work together more as a global community. So I think you've touched on a really important point that we're all going to have to think through, whether it's in your business, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your faith community or just with your group of friends. How do we mend some of the divides that have been created, and how do we become a community together again as we deal with whatever the next few years hold for us? I think these are big questions for us to ask and answer.
And I think another big question for us to ask and answer is one of the state of democracy around the world and where human rights are being placed. That also has been one of the big challenges that have been birthed by COVID-19. How are we looking regarding those?
Well, throughout history, there's this ebb and flow of history, and this is actually the story of history. It's the ebb and flow between our individual and personal rights and freedoms matched on the other hand, or balanced out on the other hand, between society's rights and responsibilities. And different political systems have tried to answer this in different ways, with democracy and capitalism answering it in one way, and communism and Marxism answering it in another way. And I think we're at one of those moments in history again. It's a big thought for New Year's Eve, but I think it's an important one, that we are at a moment in history where we're asking these questions again, and we've got to find a new balance. The balance that has existed around the world, and maybe in South Africa in particular, is not working. It's a balance basically built on neoliberal principles, which says everybody must just be allowed to get on with it, sort of driven mainly by capitalism and democratic thinking. And I don't think it's worked, not as well as it should have. And so we don't throw it completely out, but we've got to find that balance again. And I think COVID has forced us to look again at that balance. You can't just make a decision for yourself only in a global pandemic. You have to make a decision about how do my actions influence my neighbor, influence the people around me. And I think that's really been the big debate of the last 2 years. And it's a debate that will continue, I think, at least for the rest of this decade, as it plays itself out in our economy, in our social systems, in our economic policies, and in our politics. This is going to be with us for a while. COVID just gave us a reason to have the conversation, but there's a lot more to that conversation.
Certainly is, and I certainly must say that I look forward to having another opportunity to unpack all of these dynamics further with you. We thank you so much for your time and your insights as we cast our nets and our eyes forward into what the year 2022 may look like in the various aspects of our lives. That's Graeme Codrington, futurist at Tomorrow Today Global. Thank you so much for your time.